So Tammy is going to take it away now and finish setting the stage for the day.
Thanks, Marla. So this morning when I came in, they were previewing Brian's slides, and that made me modify the setting the stage a little bit because he's going to talk about some of the stuff I was going to talk about. And so this will be much shorter, and you're probably going to be thankful for that. So the theme of this whole plenary session this morning is to talk about from gaps to gains and unlocking the crop potential. And really it's about the yield gap and how we're going to manage to continue to build yield, given that we've got increased food demand and all that jazz. I'm really glad all the technical problems are going to happen now and we get it out of the way. The weather this morning, now the technical issues, and the rest of the conference is going to go swimmingly well. So anyway, yield. Everybody's had this equation, right? Genetics by environment and management. And when we talk about genetics, we're talking about things like crop selection and hybridization and integrating new things into germplasm so that we can overcome some of the obstacles for maximizing our genetic yield potential. When we talk about management, we're talking about fertility, we're talking about our soil tillage in Manitoba and no tillage everywhere else for the most part. So generalization on soil preparation. We talk about pest control, and then we're starting to, in this management space, integrate in digital service. Whether that's to try to minimize overlap when we're spraying or to maximize how we place our fertilizer. So many ways that we're integrating digital services into that management optimization. And then finally, the thing that seems to be the most challenging is that environmental influence. So the climate and the soil conditions and how that's determining our yield. And if we think about where yield's been going, it has been increasing year over year at about a 1.2% increase. And I'm going to show you a slide later that tells us a little bit about where we need to go, but we're not hitting what we need to do in order to feed the future population. So by 2050, there's going to be not only a yield gap from where genetic potential is and what we actually have, but the food gap's going to widen as well. And so if we go to the next slide, there's a bunch of different ways that we can talk about assessing that yield gap. So true genetic potential, one of the ways they do it is by looking at the irrigated yield potential. Some of us like to focus on maximum yields that have happened one time and never been repeated, 600 bushel corn or whatever it is now, and it just keeps growing and growing. But where's the return on investment there? Like, are we really able to do that in a sustainable way? Probably not. Anyway, so the yield gap is true genetic potential, and then what our average yield is. And usually there's, based on some of the studies that we've seen, about a 60% difference, but 60 to 70% difference between true genetic potential and what we're actually getting. And so maybe if we go to the next slide, yeah, there, look at that. We're really firing on all cylinders now. You can see that about 30% of the yield potential is lost due to abiotic stresses. And so that is things like extreme temperatures, salinity, too much, short-term drought, those sorts of things. Biotic losses, 36% of the yield potential is lost due to biotic stress, which is insects, our weeds, our diseases, and that's even after we've already tried to manage them. So almost 70% of our yield potential, depending on the crop. For rice, it's a lot less because we have a lot more management with it. So genetic potential versus actual attainable yield is pretty close. But you can see the red and the yellow bars are the ones that we're focusing on here. How do we address that? How do we get rid of that? How do we get to where we can consistently get to those record yields? And so as a wrap-up slide, we'll get to the next. Yeah. So by 2050, farmers need to increase food production by 60 to 70%. That's based on the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2025 from FAO, the United Nations. All right, if we're going 1.2% year over year as our average yield increase, we are going to fall, we're only going to get to about 30% yield increase. So how do we how do we get the rest of it? And so that's what the sessions this morning are going to talk about, is what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and how do we then incorporate that at the field level to try and close that gap.